And welcome back if you're joining from YouTube, all 12 of you watching an obscure channel about a slightly less obscure philosophical system. Let me go ahead and share my screen because we are going to go over some notes first. And we might only go over some of this, and of course, feel free to chime in. We might only go over some of this, and if some of this becomes relevant later on, maybe we'll consult this because it's probably a little more down to earth than the CTMU wiki, which we'll probably use as well. So, telic recursion is the process by which universal free will is exercised. Before the universe determines its next state, it takes all reality and every past and future contingency into account, then chooses a particular state on the basis of its own values, the exercising of a generalized utility function. This is known as telic recursion. Okay, maybe it'd be a better idea to go ahead. Okay, tellers and telons. This was something that we want to go over. A teller is a syntactor creating a telon. Okay. A telon or telic attractor is a potential state of high utility for one or more tellers. Okay, so it seems like what we kind of talked about last week with telons being a kind of subscription object that tellers subscribe to or interact with seems fairly accurate. So I'm assuming the syntax here is kind of like they're generating a syntax by creating or configuring the SCSPL kind of in a language-like way or maybe a self-definitive way. So they're actually generating the telons. When he says telic attractor as a potential state of high utility, it kind of sounds like an attractor state. Because I'm assuming, once tellers, or telons rather, are established, they'd also be present in the noosphere, so to speak, or the collective unconscious, or whatever you want to call it, in the deep mind, that can kind of serve as an object for subscription in a more indirect way, or actually pretty direct way, uh, given it would phenomenalize as material reality. Okay, so let me read this as well. Okay, tellers can be high up or low down in the universal hierarchy of agents, where reality as a whole is the ultimate agent, God, which I think Langan uses as an acronym for Global Operator Descriptor, and human beings are higher up than rocks, but less than God. Okay, so what would be interesting is seeing what determines hierarchy. Is it particularity of the telons subscribed to? Is it just particularity as opposed to universality that occurs via some kind of distribution of God? Okay, telons are utile syntax state relationships that provide a point or meaning for an action. Okay. What else on this would be useful to go over if anyone sees? Okay, syndiphonesis real quick, because that's been relevant. Syndiphonesis is the expression and or existence of any difference relation entails a common medium in syntax. Reality is a relation, and every relation is a syndiphionic relation exhibiting syndiphonesis or difference in sameness. Therefore, reality is a syndiphionic relation. I would word it. Okay, yeah, no, he gets to it. Syndiphonesis implies that any assertion to the effect that two things are different implies that they are reductively the same. Yeah. If their difference is real, they both reduce to a common reality and are to that extent similar. And further, that if they're relative, there would have to be something in common to serve as a medium for relation, and at the level of the relation, they would be the same. And I would also argue that the level of the relation would ultimately be reductive to the reality principle, but some things are more similar, some things are more different. So some things, some entities maybe would have that reduction occur sooner than others. Syndiphionesis, the most general of all reductive principles, forms the basis of a new view of the relational structure of reality. Okay, that was good. Let's see. Isomorphism is just structural similarity or equivalence. Yeah, don't really need that. Okay, proto-computation replaces ordinary mechanical computation with what might be better called proto-computation. Whereas computation is a process defined with respect to a specific machine model, e.g., a Turing machine, proto-computation is logically pre-mechanical. That is, before computation can occur, there must, in principle, be a physically realizable machine to host it. But in discussing the origins of the physical universe, the prior existence of a physical machine cannot be assumed. Instead, we must consider a process capable of giving rise to the physical reality itself, a process capable of not only implementing a computational syntax, but of serving as its own computational syntax by self-filtration from a realm of syntactic potential. When the word computation appears in CTMU, it is usually to proto-computation. That reference is being made. So it basically seems like mentalism or idealism. Very well articulated, though, I would say. Let's see. Telesis or telesis. In the CTMU, telesis is the universal substance, and we're down here, from which reality is refined. Telesis is the raw material of cosmogony, the ultimate ancestral medium from which the universe originates. So it seems like he's kind of getting at a substantial principle, or maybe like a prime matter, maybe even an intelligible matter. Let's see, or probably not. Probably, well, I don't know. Depend on what CTMU has in common with Platonism precisely, which I'm not actually sure of. Telesis can be bound or unbound. UBT, unbound telesis, consists of pure ontological potential, characterized by nil constraint, zero information, and total freedom. So it does sound a lot like the indefinite dyad. When bound, telesis becomes infocognition, the structured dual aspect substance of which reality consists. To be clear, CTMU monism, or monism, says that the universe consists of one dual aspect substance, infocognition, the information and its cognition, created by internal feedback within an even more basic one aspect substance called telesis. And of course, I'm kind of getting the idea that if it was potential and it can be bound and it can have a bound form, that this telesis might not actually perfectly map onto something like the indefinite dyad or prime matter.
Uh, I
Because.
wonder if
Go ahead.
I wonder if any of these names have any specific meaning, considering that I don't think any of these terms are used by others. So hence, some of them should have a like reasoning. If you're making the entire system, you get to choose why one word is one word, and considering its intelligence, there should probably be some rationale behind each
I bet it is. It's
word and
probably
as well the
telos,
combination.
but I could be wrong. It's like it maybe it could kind of fit in with some contextualization of telos, but with some of these, there kind of is like syndiphonesis. That's kind of self-explanatory. Teller, I'm not sure, although that could be telos as well. And yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm not sure exactly how he would explain that, but we could actually look into that later because that would be
I
a good
wonder if one of
idea.
them is just his name. His name, the name of his dog was Telos, so he wanted to name them name a fundamental part of his system after the dog.
Yeah, that would be
Uh,
funny.
I wonder if
Um,
we ever like find something about that. Like, there's some like, oh, what could this be abstract meaning? It was actually just a homage to a dead dog.
yeah,
That'd actually be pretty base.
he had a dog named Telon. Not a bad dog name, I suppose. But yeah, no, actually, I do like to break down words because I feel like when you get the etymology of something, you kind of have a more holistic apprehension of it, especially when you can see why that etymology kind of applies to its denotative and connotative meaning.
Uh, and then you
But
can play with the words yourself
yeah,
as well. Just put break them apart, put them together.
very true, very true. So because this UBT is ontological potential, it seems like it would kind of have within it the map of reality, or kind of the mathematical structure of reality, and that the interaction that tellers, and I might switch them up, but tellers is correct in this, not telon, have with that UBT binds it into telesis, creating telons. I'm kind of assuming it's something like that. So yeah, I'd be interested to see Chris Langan actually get more into where his system, the CTMU, jives with Platonism, where his points of departure are. But yeah, okay, there's a little bit more on UBT. Thus, whereas UBT consists of infocognitive potential, a specific reality, the SCSPL, which is self-configuring, self-processing language, consists of infocognition. Once bound in a primitive infocognitive form that drives emergence, the MU form, let me see. Don't know what that is. Maybe it means model of the universe or something else. Telesis continues to be refined into new infocognitive configurations as reality evolves. Probably in a self-referential
You
manner.
could. I have a sense that I just remember hearing mu somewhere when my mathematics class, so it could be some
It could be.
reference to a form of math.
It very well could be. Chris does that quite a lot. He like has papers on math that I have not read because I'd probably be out of my depth. Unbound telesis in the CTMU, UBT, is the ground state of existence arrived at by stripping away the constraints of reality. So, self-definition, perhaps. Since there are no distributed constraints to limit its content, UBT is all-inclusive infinite potential and the source of all freedom. Reality is created by filtratively emerging from this potential by the process of telic recursion. Since reality has a self-defined informational boundary distinguishing it from its complement, unactualized potential or unreality, it has recognizable content and structure. On the other hand, UBT is a realm of zero constraint and infinite possibility where neither boundary nor content exists. Okay, I think that's good for now. Let's get into the document. And okay, I think we basically got up to examining this. If we did read this a little bit, we'll just reread it for review. So, if determinacy corresponds to an arrow of causation, actually, let me go ahead and do this. Let's see. And I'll go ahead and have this showing. If determinacy corresponds to an arrow of causation pointing to an event from a surrounding medium, then indeterminacy corresponds to no arrow at all, acausality, and self-determinacy to a looping arrow or complex of arrows involving some kind of feedback. But cybernetic feedback, which involves information passed among controllers and regulated entities through a conductive or transmissive medium, is meaningless where such entities do not already exist, and where no sensory or actuative protocol has yet been provided. With respect to the origin of any self-determinative, perfectly self-contained system, the feedback is ontological in nature and therefore more than cybernetic. Accordingly, ontological feedback bears description as pre-cybernetic or meta-cybernetic. Indeed, because of their particularly close relationship, the theories of information, computation, and cybernetics are all in line for a convergent extension, an extension that can, in a reality-theoretic context, lay much of the groundwork for a convergent extension of all that is covered by their respective formalisms. Ordinary feedback, describing the evolution of mechanical and, with somewhat less success, biological systems, is cyclical or recursive. The system and its components repeatedly call on internal structures, routines, and actuation mechanisms in order to acquire input, generate corresponding internal information, internally communicate and process this information, and evolve to appropriate states in light of input and programming. However, where the object is to describe the evolution of a system from a state in which there is no information or programming, information processing syntax at all, a new kind of feedback is required, telic feedback. So I'm assuming this is getting at, with nothing external to drive feedback, you'll need something that is self-contained, some kind of self-feedback. So we have a bit of a diagram. Let's go ahead and actually read the diagram before we just try to interpret it. Diagram 2, the upper diagram illustrates ordinary cybernetic feedback between two information transducers. And real quick, out of the connotative context of cybernetic, does anyone know like what it literally breaks down to? Because I don't. I'm asking you guys.
Like what cybernetic means in itself.
Yeah, in itself, yeah.
Well,
Let's see. I'll look it up real quick.
I'm gonna Google it. It's not just like when you think of, well, not cyber, a mathematical study of communication and control in the animal and machine. So it's relating to communication, because I also heard of like cybernetic planned economy, which doesn't make sense if one takes like cybernetics as in like mechanical enhancements.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Perfect. Thank you. Between two information transducers, exchanging and acting on information reflecting their internal states. The structure and behavior of each transducer conforms to a syntax, or a set of structural and functional rules which determine how it behaves on a given input. To the extent that each transducer is either deterministic or non-deterministic within the bounds of syntactic constraint, the system is either deterministic or random up to determinacy. There is no provision for self-causation below the systemic level. The lower diagram, which applies to coherent self-designing systems, illustrates a situation in which syntax and state are instead determined in tandem, according to a generalized utility function, assigning differential but intrinsically scaled values to various possible syntax-state relationships. A combination of these two scenarios is partially illustrated in the upper diagram by the gray shadows within each transducer. Okay. You see those gray shadows. Okay. Information is syntactically processed. Information is syntactically processed. Information on states communicated via feedback. And in this one, you have the feedback between the state and the syntax. So I've actually talked a little bit in way older groups, probably on Discord. I think Metanoia will kind of remember some of the stuff about self-reference with conditions taken upon in the soul, and how, I mean, I would go so far as to say that these conditions, in a kind of Neville Goddard type sense, outpicture themselves, but more specifically, you actually just perceive them as materiality, and your perception thereof saturates the soul, which is a kind of feedback
they aren't
loop.
like ontologically real.
It's like something that the ontos does, basically, but you know, reifying something extrinsic probably wouldn't be a good idea. But like the reason I would say a particular state or syntax could exist, like even if we were to say that maybe the arrangement of my microphone, computer, and this pack of nicotine pouches on my desk is not ontological in itself, there has to be some place for that arrangement in the metastructure of reality, right? So everything that isn't, or you could argue isn't ontological in itself, still has to refer to a structure that is ontological. So the way I like to say this in like really basic terms is you have what reality is, the reality principle, whether it's a mind, whatever, something that's hyperousia, whatever, right? And then you'd have the way that reality is, which would be kind of like you have the subject of reality and the object of reality. And at the most basic level of reality, these two are exactly the same. You could even say this for a mind. A mind is what it is, but it, you know, and that's its object in a way, but it's also a subject. And the way that it is informs the non-ontological expressions thereof. So if we take like Plato's theory of forms, the forms are such because they're reflecting the way that reality is at the core, like the metastructural nature of reality, the mathematical nature of reality. But if you say perceive an image that is a kind of informed by a composition of the forms, actually is like almost perfect informed, it's not as if that arrangement is random. It's referring to what reality is. So yes, both things are kind of true. All right, did I read that full thing? Yeah. So that's just kind of what it reminded me of. It reminded me of like if we try to like formally or maybe more informally systemize how or the metaphysics of how the mind, like our individual minds, work with physical reality in an idealist context, like a pure, strictly idealist context, wherein materiality would essentially be relegated to perception, that it makes sense that the perception of material reality would saturate the mind and inform its condition, and you would get this feedback loop. And the input that could change the feedback loop, which I think would probably tie in well with Chris Langan's views on agency with UBT, would just be agency, consciousness. So this would be like a very subconscious thing, right? Impulse would be inertia, your appetite, whatever, things you don't even have to think about. You just kind of do it. It happens to you because it's the condition operates on a principle of inertia, whatever the condition inhabited is. But you can kind of input feedback like a direct feed, so to speak. But yeah, we'll continue on from there so that we can gracefully at least get a couple pages in. Okay. The currency of telic feedback is a quantifiable self-selection parameter, generalized utility. Okay. A generalized property of law and state in the maximization of which they undergo mutual refinement. Note that generalized utility is self-descriptive and autologous, intrinsically and retroactively defined within the system, and pre-informational in the sense that it assigns no specific property to any specific object. Okay. Hope he elaborates that, because I would kind of think of the utility itself, maybe his distinction as generalized utility, as kind of being the desired object state to maximize that utility, which I would at least think would entail information, but I might be misunderstanding. Through telic feedback, oh, see, here we go. We're going to get to that soon, that funny little symbol. Through telic feedback, a system retroactively self-configures by reflexively applying a generalized utility function to its internal existential potential or possible futures. In effect, the system brings into existence brings itself into existence rather, as a means of atemporal communication between its past and future, whereby law and state, syntax, and informational content generate and refine each other across time to maximize total systemic self-utility. This defines a situation in which the true temporal identity of a system is a distributed point of temporal equilibrium that is both between and inclusive of past and future. In this sense, the system is timeless or atemporal. Now, I don't want to get into it too much, but I could see a clarified version of this that would avoid like any notion of reifying time. But I do want to say that definitely reminds me of the Leibniz text, Discourse on Metaphysics, that we just read. Very close to that. When Leibniz was talking about, actually, I still have to upload those. Leibniz was talking about how you could, many of you were there, how, in Alexander, maybe the fledgling Alexander or Caesar, you could kind of see what he was going to be from that. If you were like a perfect mind, at least, you'd be able to see that.
Well, isn't there multiple possibilities? I mean, Colin Alexander doesn't stop him from, eating a bread a bit wrongly, choking and dying. Like agency.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if, see, I think there would be, but, well, maybe not in that context, because I think something like that would have to be completely conditional. I think if you like die on accident, I think that has to be not, I don't think there's like any actual random event. However, I do think you can have agency, but I'm not sure that Leibniz thought that. But well, he thought it in like a very strange way that we discussed a little bit, and it was essentially that you
I
have
mean,
free will because this is just what free will does. when it's exercised.
If it is possible, shouldn't it happen in some world at least? I think that's at least. I think I will subscribe a bit to David Deutsch picture, and David Deutsch is, if it's possible, it happens in some universe. Hence, it is possible that Alexander choked on a piece of bread at age 3.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would offer to that is, does fathomability equal possibility? And we won't stick too much
No,
on
of
that.
course.
Yeah. But
We
yeah,
can
I would agree
fathom
with
in
a many worlds thing to solve this a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that some things get a bit ridiculous. Like imagine it's technically possible there's a world where every single person chokes on a piece of bread at age 40.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, and that's actually a great example, because then if you can fathom something happening like Alexander the Great
although
choking on a piece of bread, it might not actually be possible, like in the condition that
yeah,
he's inhabiting, that would
there would have to be
phenomenalize.
some specific things. It's a
Yeah.
question what it is, because if the limit approaches 0, then you'd be looking for it for infinitely a long time, which is
I I
basically
thought the
doesn't
way
exist.
Yeah,
Leibniz
that could be a good way to explain it.
thought the way Leibniz talked about it was that like the condition that Alexander the Great inhabited wouldn't allow for anything like that to happen.
I don't know if he
I mean,
he didn't really explicate in that direction, but I would agree with that personally in my my understanding. Well, maybe. Well, I'm not
I
saying
mean,
that Alexander's condition is exactly like that, but probably.
I just find it hard for a human to be immune to choking on a
Yeah.
piece of bread. It would have to be like someone, like the only way you could be that is if you're like a person who refuses to swallow before chewing 100 times. Then you'd probably be safe from any such event occurring.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, okay. Well, my understanding would basically, okay. So if you're chewing, all of this, you're choking is basically a phenomenalization of a condition that your soul has taken on for itself, that it might not be a great idea to look at just the probabilities of physical events happening, because those physical events, aren't externally real in themselves, and they have to be informed by a condition. Although I guess a similar argument could just be cast on, like, what, just to what degree does this possibility exist in the condition of this person's soul? But we gotta keep pushing on. But interesting
yeah.
stuff though. Um, a system that evolves by means of telic recursion, and ultimately, every system must either be or be embedded in such a system as a condition of existence, is not merely computational, but proto-computational. That is, its primary level of processing configures its secondary computational and informational level of processing by telic recursion. Telic recursion can be regarded as the self-determinative mechanism of not only cosmogony, but a natural scientific form of teleology. However, before taking these ideas any further, let's attend a little orientation session based on the remarkably penetrating vision of John Archibald Wheeler, a preeminent scientist and reality theorist whose name is virtually synonymous with modern physics. Okay. The future of reality theory according to John Wheeler. Apparently, Chris Langan was invited to meet with John Wheeler, but he never did it. So, in 1979, the celebrated physicist John Wheeler, having coined the phrase black hole, put it to good philosophical use in the title of an exploratory paper, Beyond the Black Hole, in which he describes the universe as a self-excited circuit. The paper includes an illustration in which one side of an uppercase U, ostensibly standing for universe, is endowed with a large and rather intelligent-looking eye, intently regarding the other side, which it ostensibly acquires through observation as sensory information. By dint of placement, the eye stands for the sensory or cognitive aspect of reality, perhaps even a human spectator within the universe, while the eye's perceptual target represents the informational aspect of reality. By virtue of these complementary aspects, it seems that the universe can, in some sense, but not necessarily that of common usage, be described as conscious and introspective and perhaps even infocognitive. That would be a cool paper to read, Beyond the Black Hole. I didn't know it actually introduced this. I've read this before, but I have definitely forgotten some of it. So that would be a good thing to read. So we have the universe, right? The object, the subject, the feedback, and then if this guy was actually the source of this over here, then maybe that's actually producing that. I don't know. A little bit of feedback in both directions, maybe. I don't know. Okay. Universe has a self-excited circuit, which I think is a. Oh wait, is there an animation here? Not found. Back to Facebook.
It's a dead Facebook page.
How do I? Okay. Oh no. All right. Well, no animation. I'm assuming the animation is just. Here, there we go. Is like
what would the
this
animation
going
be?
into here. This dotted line maybe going towards the eye. Something like that. But yeah. I think that's a very good description. Self-excited circuit. And if it's a circuit, you would assume that there is probably feedback in both ways. Some kind of self-objectification and then feedback. All right. Wheeler, an eminent and highly capable representative of those familiar with the advantages and deficiencies of our current models of reality, did not arrive at the given illustration as an isolated speculation. In conjunction with several other Wheeler concepts, the participatory universe, law without law, and it from bit. And you know what? Next time we might go ahead and take some of these terms and go ahead and elaborate them for ourselves, because I think some of Wheeler's stuff would probably be good in general, but also good for studying the CTMU. The self-excited circuit amounts to a preliminary but well-considered program for describing the physical universe. According to its mandate, the true description of reality must possess two novel features not found in any dominant paradigm: global, structural, and dynamical reflexivity, or self-excited circuitry. And I'm assuming this kind of dynamic reflexivity is kind of like a reversion, kind of like a precession reversion or self-reference, or kind of like just the feedback, with perception an integral part of the self-recognition function of reality, matter information equivalence. So that's another idea I really do like of Langan, is he kind of holds, I think we actually read him say this outright, that the information of the chair, what does the code look like? It looks like the chair. And we are perceiving that, and the information's rendered to us. Okay, and identification up to isomorphism of concrete physical reality with information, the abstract currency of perception. Together, these features constitute a cosmological extension of cybernetics, or equivalently, a metacybernetic extension of cosmology. Wheeler characterizes these four concepts as follows. The self-excited circuit, a participatory universe, is a self-excited circuit in the sense that it implicates observers in perceptual ontological feedback. It is a logic loop in which physics gives rise to observer participancy. Observer participancy gives rise to information, and information gives rise to physics. All right. I think that's fairly good. And by the way, especially in this part, feel free to chime in. I know we do kind of want to get through some stuff, but the participatory universe, the cognitive and perceptual processes of observers are integral to the self-excitative feedback of reality. So it's like, I'm assuming the agents described are the exciters as well. So, and in a way, that which is excited. This is asserted by the participatory principle or participatory anthropic principle, the PAP, which Wheeler informally describes as follows. Stronger than the anthropic principle is what one might call, or what I might call, the participatory principle. According to it, we could not even imagine a universe that did not somewhere and for some stretch of time contain observers. because the very building materials of the universe are these acts of observer participancy. This participatory principle takes for its foundation the absolutely central point of the quantum. No elementary phenomenon is a phenomenon until it is observed or registered phenomenon. Or until it is an observed phenomenon. And observed, okay. Note that on some level of generality, the last sentence identifies observation with registration and thus implicitly equates human and mechanical recognition, an observed or registered phenomenon. Okay, so that kind of gets into, or what that reminds me of is when people think of like the dual slit experiment, and they're like, maybe they assume that somebody's actually literally watching it happen. Like, no, I just saw it. I just saw it. As soon as I looked at it. But this seems to
Yeah, it's the measurement,
right. It's the fact that it's being measured, and if that like measurement was already contained in the observer, or maybe not contained, but extended by the observer, so to speak, it would equate to much the same. What it almost seems like to me is if when you like start to look for reasons for things to happen in reality, like in this case on the quantum level, those reasons kind of just happen. They kind of just reveal themselves because you're looking for them, almost, if that makes sense.
That sounds like, I don't know, someone built the world and you're going too deep. It's like nobody was meant to go this deep.
Yeah,
Please add
yeah.
something here.
Exactly what I have
Uh,
in mind.
yeah, or it could be, informational things. Simply like having that all registered at the same time would just be excess, waste, which is not necessary. And if one thing is true when it comes to Occam's razor in general, if that's, universal principles, that if it can be simplified, it will be simplified.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Therefore, if it can, function while not existing and only has to exist when you need it, then that's what it will do.
Yeah, well said. All right. Law without law, order from disorder. Concisely, nothing can be taken as given when it comes to cosmogony. In Professor Wheeler's own words, to me, the greatest discovery yet to come will be to find how this universe, coming into being from a Big Bang, developed its laws of operation. I call this law without law, or order from disorder. Imagine the universe with all its regularities and its laws coming into being out of something utterly helter-skelter, higgledy-piggledy, and random. If you were the Lord constructing the universe, how would you have gone about it? It's inspiring to read the life of Charles Darwin and think how the division of plant and animal kingdoms, all this myriad of order, came about through the miracles of evolution, natural selection, and chance mutation. To me, this is a marvelous indication that you can get order by starting with disorder. Okay.
Isn't that chance mutation now being questioned? If I'm not, I think
I would put
Errol may
it.
have been talking about it.
I would put it into question for sure.
Yeah, because I also know that I got to know a bit of an older gentleman in the Swedish sphere over here who also knows university, a mathematician questioning it.
Oh, nice.
Who seems interesting. It's I basically got my contact into the whole intellectual world by then. Well, I'll keep this. I don't know. I don't know if I want to discuss my entire life with a bunch of strangers on YouTube.
Yeah,
I think I'll cut my point there.
It's all good. It's all good.
I don't know. Perhaps if you can bother enough to censor what university I just mentioned. I don't know if that's too much effort.
No, I can censor that. Yeah. Let me actually, in order to do that, I'll give myself a little note.
I was about to message you.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead. Actually, that's probably.
Yeah,
okay.
I kind of forgot. That's a bit too much. Although I think
no,
Swedishness
I
is
always
obvious
forget
enough
too.
that it does not need to be censored.
Yeah. Okay. It from bit. Reality adduces and or produces itself in the form of information residing in quantum events. As Wheeler summarizes in his paper Information, Physics, Quantum, The Search for Links, every physical quantity, every it, derives its ultimate significance from bits, binary yes or no indications. He then goes on to discuss this concept at length, offering 3 questions, 4 no's, and 5 clues about the quantum informational character of reality. The questions are as follows. How come existence? How come the quantum? How come one world out of many observer participants? The nose. Seductive pitfalls to be avoided in answering the three questions include no tower of turtles, no laws, no continuum, and no space or time. Okay, so what is Tower of Turtles? I know someone with better lore than I do.
I'll just Google the. It should be
Mal
Tower
with the
Turtles.
Googling. That's what we need.
No, that's not it. I'm literally just getting images of Tower Turtle.
Well, we
Yeah,
can't
that's it.
have those, apparently. We have to avoid that
Yeah, well,
in
it's
answering
okay.
these.
Now I found one. One problem with the Platonic idea appears to be the Tower of Turtles problem. This appears to be a critique of Platonism.
Oh.
Members only story. Oh my god. Members only story. How dare you do that, Gerald R. Barron?
That means it's
The
probably bad.
anti. Wait, no. Let's see. Well, it's against the eight. This is the 18th in the case against physicalism series. Well, okay, it's against physicalism, yet something's wrong about Plato.
Okay, so I looked it up. And it came up as turtles all the way down, and it's saying problem of
That's not
infinite
it.
regress. That's not it.
Oh, turtles all the way down is expression, no problem. Oh, okay. I just got turtles all the way down about a novel. I got the other one I went to the right, which is assume was turtles all the way down. Was it just said an up and coming novel.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
it's
wonder
probably that
if
is in.
yeah, probably infinite regress. I wonder why they would think Platonism has infinite regress. That doesn't seem
I
to.
don't know. It says. Let me just check here what that post said. The one problem with the Platonic idea is repeated with the Tower Turtles problem that Davis refers to frequently in the video mentioned above. There are many versions, but Wikipedia expresses a. I don't know. That seems like. I just hear Wikipedia expresses. What can you find? I mean, you could probably just find Plato somewhere here. Plato. There's no mention of Plato in this entire Tower Turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
What's an infinite regress? Okay, why is P? Oh, it's like it just continues forever. There has to be an end to it. It's
Yeah.
basically saying that you have to have an unmoved move or something that
Right.
generates everything.
Yeah. So some kind of primary reality principle. Okay.
Could you have a circle of turtles?
Circle of turtles. That
No, that's
pass the
really what it
question
says.
off. They pass the question
Yeah,
away
it's like
from them.
you pass the question and eventually reach it to the person you asked. It's like, you're the origin of everything else. Yes. What's the origin you? Everything else. I mean, that would be very weird.
That's pretty.
Yeah, but
If that's not a thing, I feel like that would be applicable to materialism or maybe like dualism, like a concrete like ontological split or gap between materiality and idealism would kind of be like that. Okay.
I don't know. It's like, oh, how do we know what we see is real? Because I'm conscious of it. How do we know your consciousness is real? Because I can perceive. I don't know how you really work that together. It feels like
Yeah.
it just ends up with consciousness being the prior and the other posterior.
Yeah, it kind of at some point with questions like that it becomes like ridiculous to question it like well, I mean, you get cogito ergo sum or cogito ergo sum. I think therefore I am, I'm conscious, but how do you know how do you actually
Yeah.
know you're conscious? Because it's not like
Well,
something you affirm a posteriori. It's just kind of there.
you have some experience. You can't really deny that you're experiencing
Yeah,
something, and then you just call that consciousness.
right,
Therefore, well, you perhaps saying you gives you individuality. Okay, we can't take the assumption that you are many.
right.
Therefore, it's simply uh, it, which refers to whatever. Not I. You can't really like. How do you refer to yourself without specifying I or we? That's like in neither plural nor singular.
It.
It no, but it is like it's another object. You're part of this object.
I think
Hence, you
you'd
can't
have
say
to
it
speak
because it
very
is.
generally, like, okay, there is something real, and that does refer to an object. Therefore, reality
Yeah,
is, and if
yeah. Wait.
all we can affirm is mind, then it seems to lead to, and this is kind of irrelevant for anyone watching,
Yeah,
but
you
we'll
could say
take it
there is I, which is either collective or individual, which
right.
experiences consciousness,
Right. So
right? That
you either
self
get
seems to be relevant.
solipsism or you can affirm that, okay, if this
Yeah.
is all I can affirm and there are these apparently conscious actors that I cannot affirm yet, then it stands to reason that they also have some existence to a mental capacity. So why reduce that to simply a perception? Because the perception has to be grounded in something. But yeah, let's move on. Okay, so
Yeah, I don't know. Wait, so Tower of Turtles is
no
striking
Tower of
honest.
Turtles, no laws,
Yeah.
no continuum, and no space or time. And the clues which light the way toward the true answers include the boundary of a boundary is zero, no question, no answer, the super Copernican principle, consciousness, including the quotes, and more is different. Okay. We will now give a brief account of these questions, precautions, and clues. How come existence? The ontological and cosmological thrust of this question is obvious. In some form, it has bedeviled philosophers from time immemorial. As interpreted by Wheeler, it leads to four inevitable conclusions. The world cannot be a giant machine ruled by any pre established continuum physical law. There is no such thing at the microscopic level as space or time or space time continuum. The familiar probability function or functional. Did somebody pop out?
I popped out for a second.
Okay.
Just fixing my
Just
mic.
making sure. Just making sure. Nobody's leaving. No, I'm just kidding. The familiar probability function or functional and wave equation or functional wave equation of standard quantum theory provide mere continuum idealizations and by reason of this circumstance conceal the information theoretic source from which they derive. No element in the description of physics shows itself as closer to primordial than the elementary quantum phenomenon. That is, the elementary device intermediated act of posing a yes or no physical question and eliciting an answer, or, in brief, the elementary act of an observer participancy. Otherwise stated, every physical quantity, every it, derives its ultimate significance from bits, binary yes or no indications, a conclusion from which we epitomize in the phrase it from bit. So we actually already have a pretty good indication of what that is. Okay, how come the quantum? Why is the universe made up of apparently propter hoc, non-deterministic, but post hoc informational quantum events? As Wheeler observes, quantum physics requires a new view of reality. What then is the exact logical relationship between the quantum and the new view of reality it demands? What is this new view, and how does the quantum fit into it? How come the one world of the many observer participants? Insofar as the term observer participants embraces scientists and other human beings, this question invites a quasi anthropological interpretation. Why should a universe consisting of separate observers with sometimes conflicting agendas and survival imperatives display structural and nomological unity, where observers are capable of creating events within a global unitary manifold of their common universe? Why should they not be doing it strictly for themselves, each in his or her own universe, and never the twain shall meet? Where the observer participant concept is generalized to include non anthropic, information transducing systems, what is holding all these systems together in a single unified way? That is a great question. And I'm going to give my perspective on it since I have a hostage audience. I'm just kidding. I would say it's a good question because with idealism and plural like souls or ideal agents, I'm sure most of us have wondered like why is it that we're not just perceiving our own condition? And I think the answer for this is pretty simple. If we're perceiving the condition that we are inhabiting, well, condition in itself necessitates a relation of definition with the conditions that it is not. Or definition is already or always defined against what it isn't. And conditions are always relative. So if we're going to inhabit a condition, stands to reason that we will perceive, and we're perceiving our own condition, then in order to actually perceive our condition, we will, in a sense, by perceiving our own condition, perceive the conditions relative to it, and those inhabiting the conditions relative to it. So I think that would be a pretty good answer, and I wouldn't be surprised if his answer is pretty close to that. No Tower of Turtles. Okay, we'll have a little explication here. Borrowed from William James, this aphorism means no infinite regress to even prior causal domains and principles. To this, we might equate an updated version of a well-known aphorism credited to Harry Truman. The explanatory buck stops here, where here refers to this reality that we actually inhabit and observe. To this, Wheeler adds a crucial insight. To endlessness, no alternative is evident but a loop, such as physics gives rise to observer participancy gives rise to information, and information gives rise to physics. Hey, that's actually kind of like the circle of turtles, almost, without further explanation
Answer
from
the
them.
circles of turtles.
Yeah.
That's the...
Yeah.
Just need enough turtles to be able to make them meet at the top.
Yeah. Only such an ontological loop is capable of forming a lariat, wide and strong enough for a theoretical lassoing of reality. The task at hand is therefore to locate a way to make it and a medium in which to wield it. As Wheeler states, the universe must have come into being without even a pre-existing plan, only a principle of organization, which is no organization at all, would seem to offer itself. Wait, hold on a second. The universe must have come into being without even a pre-existing plan. Only a principle of organization, which is no organization at all, would seem to offer itself. Okay, or to reiterate, the world cannot be a giant machine ruled by any pre-established continuum physical law. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Which also, Leibniz basically says this exact thing as well. So not only seems that Langan has a lot of stuff that's very similar to Leibniz, probably from reading Leibniz, but Wheeler himself may.
Or
This is like when Leibniz
can it
talks
also
about.
just...
Oh, go ahead.
It couldn't also be that if you're correct about the world, even if you're completely unaware of somebody else, you will come to similar ideas just
Yes,
by the fact
absolutely.
that you're...
You could.
Like, because at least because I was first a politics spurg, I noticed myself that when I read the Republic, I agreed with basically everything minus the wife sharing part.
Yeah,
I
no.
missed that part. That was interesting.
What? You didn't like
Yeah,
that part?
the Guardians. The Guardians share their wives among each other, and they're not meant to be able to see whose children, so they all raise them collectively. It's
That
I
almost
feel like
seems
there are
like
better ways
oh, there
of
definitely
doing
is.
it.
There definitely is. I feel like that would be
It
like
just sounds...
more degenerate, if you were just
like, how would you even fix that? Because, like, at that point, if you really want to, you just make... I mean, like, you can't have sex because you have sexual intercourse, you're going to get, like, bonds and stuff. So, really, you just need, like, all, like, intro-fertilization. Like,
Yeah.
Brave New World. Just, breed them in test tubes. There we go, problem solved.
Yeah,
A Brave New World. Truly the platonic ideal
Thanks,
state.
Plato. God. Uh, yes, and I would absolutely agree that if two people are correct, I mean, I feel that way quite often as well, without being informed. However, I would say maybe in this case, well, I know Chris Langan talks about Leibniz, and Leibniz is, pretty renowned for not exactly his, well, yeah, partly his physics, but his math as well. I mean, I guess calculus is kind of physics, right? Or am I wrong? But this
I mean,
is
math is basically... It's
yeah,
like it's the language of physics.
right. So Leibniz says something very close to this, but he actually kind of uses imagery, and he supposes that we're zooming in on a machine and looking for final causes, and saying that you can't find any final cause in the machine, in the cogs and working. Like if you were to, I think he says it in the monadology with like a brain. If you were to do this with a brain, or at least that's kind of the implication, you're never going to find like mind or a thought in there. But let's continue on. And let me do a quick time check. Let me see. Okay, let's get up to this diagram. Maybe just before it. Real quick. Kind of.
triangles, it's clearly Illuminati. I don't
Yep,
know.
well,
That's an
that's,
old meme. I apologize.
uh, awkward. No, I'm just kidding. No continuum. The venerable continuum of analysis and mechanics is a mathematical and physical chimera. Usually associated with a set of real numbers, a continuum is a unified extensible whole with a distance parameter that can be infinitely subdivided in such a way that any two distinct points are separated by an infinite number of intermediate points. As Wheeler puts it, a half century of development in the sphere of mathematical logic has made it clear that there's no evidence supporting the belief of the existential character of the number continuum. Some numbers, e.g. irrational ones like the square root of 2, cannot be precisely computed and therefore do not correspond to any physically meaningful location on a number line or physical trajectory. They have an abstract existence only. Okay, interesting. I get really I'm not a math guy, but with some like the weird I can't think of any off the top of my head. With some of those weird math like flustering things that the actual answer is super counterintuitive. I find it super interesting, but I also get really annoyed by it. Like there's
Just
that one
something
with
like
the
irrational
goats.
numbers.
Well, rational numbers not so much, but like have you heard of that thing with the 4 doors, right? And there is a car behind one and there's goats behind the other 3. And
Okay.
you pick one of the doors and you get to decide after you've picked a door whether to switch, and there's no information revealed to you, okay? After you've picked one door, whether to switch to another door. Whether that's going to increase your odds of getting the car. And to my mind, yeah, go ahead. I want to see
it's
what.
no difference. Isn't it no difference? That's like my immediate.
Yeah, no, it makes
yes.
0 sense for there to be any difference,
It's
but
like
supposedly, like
you're rolling a dice once, okay? You're not allowed to see it, and then you're like, do you want to pick it up and roll again?
yeah,
Like, how does that change anything? Just repeating the same function twice.
I know. Yeah, so honestly, I do suspect that there is like a formulaic like discrepancy or like something that's not accounted for, but mathematicians get real autistic about this, but usually it's considered to be and actually simulations.
Please give it to me.
Yeah, I'll pull up the Wikipedia
was that Marilyn
entry.
Vos Savant?
Yes, it was.
All I can say
it
is
was
I'm in
Marilyn
like a
Vos
decently
Savant.
not doxing myself more than I already accidentally have, or I will say that I am in a course which has fairly mathematically interested people and a very good teacher, so I'll be able to get probably some opinion on this question.
Yeah, you should do it because I know the teacher would probably be familiar with it because it was really famous. Marilyn Vos Savant was, I guess, has a more popular first place prize for highest IQ, which I don't know.
Could you
I'm gonna
post
give
it
it to Langan.
in here because
yeah, feel free.
well,
But
the quiz is was he based on other questions? You know, that's the true test if he actually had high IQ.
oh, it's a woman.
I mean, that just sounds statistically unlikely, right?
It
just
does.
because of the bell curve.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
Like it
Sorry,
doesn't
ladies.
make sense. Although,
sorry, ladies, you're all beautiful though. Don't message me though.
you see, that's the thing. Do you want to be beautiful or do you want to be smart? That's the first thing. Like, well, it's not really just smart. It's like, do you want a normal distribution curve or beautiness, right? Or do you want a tilted one, which is men?
I think.
If you want to believe, let's see.
I think generally, maybe this is controversial. Maybe it's flat out
How
wrong.
is it a 2/3 probability?
Did you just read it? yeah.
Car is behind one of the doors. This probably does not change after hose.
But I mean, I guess they confirmed it with simulations, but again, I feel like there's some formulaic, incorrectness.
Well, no. This like I want this written out in math. I'm reading. So when the player first makes sure there's a 2 1/3 chance that the car is behind one of the doors not chosen. Okay, the probability does not change after the host reveals the goddess behind one of the unchosen doors. Okay, and when the host provides information about the two unchosen doors, revealing that one of them does not have a card behind it, the 2/3 chance of the card being behind one of the unchosen doors rests on the unchosen and unrevealed door, as opposed to the 1/3 chance of there being the card behind the door contestant it chose initially.
Oh, there's only 3, so my bad. I said 4.
Let's see here. To give probabilistic dependent, there's more information about doors 2 and 3 than it was at the beginning game when the one was chosen. The host action adds value to the door if to the door not eliminated, but not the one chosen by constants. From choosing between the two, the former uses a previous What? Many savants can refuse to believe switches beneficial.
Hey, let's okay, we're actually
It is like most of them calling Savant wrong. Okay, including nearly 1,000 PhDs wrote to the magazine, most of them calling Savant wrong. Even when given explanation, simulation, formal mathematical proof, many people wait for what's the formal mathematical proof? Give me the proof. Okay, like, this does car results of staying wins go.
It adds value because it does. Okay, it just does.
Well, like what? How does this make sense?
Because
results of staying results of the switching to the door offered.
It does because of our observer participancy.
No, that doesn't make sense. Well, switch. Let's see, switch and win, switch, stay and win. Let's see. Which has been how have they been eliminated? Like this doesn't make sense. Like I don't see how. Okay, there's a goat behind that one. It just means okay, now there's a 50-50 chance it's this door or the other door. I want to see the mathematical proof.
Yeah, see, I'm glad that you're annoyed with it as much as I was, because I'm not good at math, and I'm assuming you are.
Let's see, 1/3 goat, total 1/6 stays. What?
I'm just gonna title "goat problem" at the end of the YouTube video.
Oh, it's most open. Like I did, like it doesn't make any intuitive sense. Like I don't see how that shouldn't affect your door. Let's see. No 10,000 wrote to most. Polar, one of the most prolific, remained unconvinced. Okay, Paul Erados. Let's see whose background is. Okay.
We're getting really Nordic right now.
Yeah, things are getting
there has
Nordic
to be like
here.
it doesn't like I refuse. This annoys me. Beyond we can finish, but after this we're going through this.
Not intuitive at all.
All right, let's come back to that. Let's just go through. Let's go through to the boundary of a zero. I'll let you guys decide. You guys want to go up through the diagram or just up through the boundary of a boundary is a zero?
No, let's go up through the diagram.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right. Well, we're almost done with that. So, or we have like one page basically. No space or time. Again, there is no such thing at the microscopic level as space or time, or space-time continuum. On the submicroscopic level, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle turns spacetime into seemingly chaotic quantum foam, casting doubt on the connectivity of space and the ordinality of time. Wheeler quotes Einstein in a Kantian vein, whoopsie. Time and space are modes by which we think and not conditions in which we live. Regarding these modes, yeah, that is very Kantian. Kantian kind of, those are like, primary categories for him or something like that. Regarding these modes as derivable from a proper theory of reality as idealized, again to that part of the recording, functions of an idealized continuum, we will not feed time into any deep-reaching account of existence. We must derive time, and time only, in the continuum idealization out of it. Likewise with space. Okay. The boundary of a zero, or the boundary of a boundary is zero. In essence, this intuitive notion from algebraic topology says that closed structures embody a certain kind of self-cancellative symmetry. This can be illustrated in 3 dimensions by a tetrahedron, the simplicial boundary of which incorporates its 4 equilateral triangle faces. To find the boundary of this boundary, one would measure the clockwise or counterclockwise oriented edges around the face, thus measuring each edge of the tetrahedron twice in opposite directions, because summing the measurements now cancels to 0 at both edge. The boundary of the tetrahedron is 0. Wait. In opposite. Okay, so thus measuring each edge of the tetrahedron twice in opposite directions. Because summing the measurements now cancels to 0 at each edge, the boundary of the tetrahedron is 0. This property turns out to have extensive applications in physics, particularly the theory of fields. Okay, I wonder if this can actually be interesting for ether theory. And I actually just found a good channel on that recently. Or someone posted it, I think, and
I'll have to find that.
yeah, I will post it in the server shortly because I actually the guy has some good stuff, like some Ken Wheeler type stuff on like field theory and ether, but he's not like a metaphysics guy at all. He believes in the ether. So as regards the mutual grip of matter on space and space on matter, or less colorfully, the relationship of space and matter, in Wheeler's view, its ubiquity inspires hope that we will someday complete the mathematics of physics and derive everything from nothing, all law from no law. I think they're a little off there. Thus, it is closely related to law without law and so-called ex nihilo creation. I'm not sure why Langan, of all people, would give credence to ex nihilo instead of, like ex deo. Okay, so negative
Well,
one
he
plus.
is God believing. He said he does presuppose a God. So
Yeah, but some, well, I mean, a lot of Christianity is like creatio ex nihilo,
he also
which,
says it's closely related. It doesn't say this.
yeah, true, fair, yeah. True. I'm glad you're
Because
tempering me from
this
making.
feels like you need to be a physicsberg to truly
Yeah,
understand to a certain
yeah.
degree.
I feel like you do. I feel like this is teaching me like physics, but I'd probably do well to get into some. I don't know. I need like some based
As well
physics.
as math. Like I'm happy with like what I'm uh, going through. I mean, I found like a David Deutsch. I'm just trying to get used to just listening to physics. But the problem with physics as well, what I like to do generally is just listen sound. You can't do that because physics you actually need to like watch diagrams.
Mhm.
You have to sit and watch.
Yeah, I did that with Ken Wheeler's stuff, but I'm not sure how applicable his stuff is. He has like a very novel system. But yeah, okay. So let's look at this. Okay, let's actually read. I'm gonna read the diagram before I look at it. The boundary of a directed one-dimensional. Okay, this 1A. The boundary of a directed one-dimensional line segment consists of its zero-dimensional endpoints, which separate the line from its complement, the space surrounding the line. The initial point represents the debt required to start the line and is thus given a value of -1, while the terminal point represents the payoff for completing the line and is given a value of +1. When the initial and terminal points of the line are identified as indicated by the curved arrow, the result is a closed line bounding a planar disk, 1B. Because the endpoints now coincide, they sum to 0 and no longer separate the line from its complement. Thus, the zero-dimensional boundary of the one-dimensional boundary of the two-dimensional disk is 0. Okay, so interestingly, this does seem relevant to some notions of counter space, and I'm not talking about your kitchen. Counter space in the sense of basically the field of unmanifest potential, wherein everything exists without spatial distance. Okay, so we're gonna leave off here. Okay. 2A. A triangular area can be decomposed into 4 smaller triangular areas, introducing a uniform, in this case, clockwise, orientation. Okay. I see that's the reds. Okay. To the areas, red arrows, imparts the same orientation to the outer perimeter, outer blue arrows. Okay. Recreating the situation of 1B, notice that the blue arrows next to each other, next to each interior edge point in opposite directions. and therefore cancel. Okay. A little more complicated. Again, the initial and terminal points of the perimeter coincide and cancel to 0, no matter where they lie. Okay. When adjacent perimeter segments are identified as indicated by the outer arrows. Okay, so it's kind of like that is right here and also these lines. Okay. The triangle folds into a tetrahedron, 2B. Its faces form a closed two-dimensional boundary separating its three-dimensional interior from its exterior, while its edges form a closed one-dimensional boundary separating its faces from each other, but now the blue arrows cancel out at every edge. And the one-dimensional boundary of the two-dimensional boundary of the tetrahedron is 0. So for both the 2D disk and the 3D tetrahedron, the boundary of a boundary is 0. While physicists often use this rule to explain the conservation of energy momentum, or as Wheeler calls it, momenergy. Not sure if I like that. Mom energy. It can be more
Mom energy.
it can be more generally interpreted with respect to information and constraint or state in syntax. That is, the boundary is analogous to a constraint which separates an interior attribute satisfying the constraint from a complementary exterior attribute, thus creating an informational distinction. Let me reread that one more time. Momentum energy, it can also, I'm kind of adding a word, it can also be more generally interpreted with respects to information and constraint or state and syntax. That is, the boundary is analogous to a constraint which separates an interior attribute satisfying the constraint from a complementary exterior attribute, thus creating an informational distinction. Okay, I like that. That seems like a way to explain a further way to explain the ultimate relation between defined things and kind of reconcile plurality, and explain why it's actually almost in a way not even plural, and not even having a true boundary, or at least its boundary, zero sums. Does anyone who is good at math want to explain all of this better than I can before we end the recording?
Paul Nigman, I think that might be you.
We're calling on our resident Nord. I think we kind of do have it fairly well, I think.
Oh wait, I'm back. Okay, wait. I was speaking muted. My bad.
Okay. There you are.
Yeah, that's it. I would say you don't really need to know math. You just need to know vectors, right?
Mhm.
Because if you look at that triangle which has been formed, it's really just a bunch of vectors pointing in multiple different directions. But the thing that will be noticed is each vector cancel has something that cancels itself out, right? If for each one pointing, in an upwards to the left direction, there is an equivalent one pointing downwards. There are two for each case. Hence, they all just cancel each other out. There's no place where there's more going in one direction than the other.
Right.
It's fairly intuitive if one of those has gone through vectors.
Thank you for that.
And neither physics or math.
We have a affirmation of zero sum. Thought I'd never see the day. No, I'm just kidding. Very good stuff. We will go ahead and leave it here, and we will start with no question, no answer, since this actually, it's gone on just over an hour, like hour 15 minutes as far as the recording's concerned. So if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching. If you're interested in joining in on these groups, go ahead and message me on, or I guess you could leave a comment. You're probably better off messaging me on Telegram, Twitter, or Instagram. My tag on all of those is metamundanity. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.